Happy Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all the dads, past, present, and future. And for any of you who find today difficult, please know that I am thinking of you. It is a very big weekend, though, for outdoor plans, Juneteenth as well, and our heat dome remains firmly parked in place. So I wanted to continue to kind of update you, give you the latest on the situation and when we can finally expect some relief. Starting with yesterday, daytime highs noticed still not tapping the triple digits. I mean, plenty hot out there, especially when you factor in the humidity and the feels like values. But when we take a look back at our 2-week history, and this is from Bush Intercontinental, which serves as one of our official climate reporting sites here in Southeast Texas, we've been above average for the past 9-10 days or so. So about a week and a half. We've gotten up to 97, 98 degrees at Bush Intercontinental, 99 in a few other spots, 100 once in Cleveland. However, when you factor in that humidity to the feels like values, here's the peak heat indices yesterday afternoon. Notice even along the coastline, it felt like 110 in Galveston, and widespread values at least above the 108 threshold for a heated advisory were experienced across the board, but most of these fell between about 110 and 114. So that certainly puts us above the threshold for excessive heat warnings. That number, that mark that we look for is 113. And without surprises, it is been extended once again, our excessive heat warning, to now include most of the day on Monday as well, which is Juneteenth. And again, a lot of celebrations are going on outside. So be safe, be smart, listen to your body. If you do have to be outside during the peak heating hours of the day, which is the middle of the day, the afternoon hours, take breaks often in the shade and AC, and of course also stay hydrated. I wanted to take a second, though, to talk about, since I have more time, right, in these long frame digital updates, to really dive into the details to hopefully create some education moments where we can kind of learn about the differences and why certain things happen the way they do. Wind direction matters when it comes to temperature, and this is playing a role into why we haven't actually hit that triple digit mark, although I would argue that the actual temperature isn't the important piece of the puzzle here. It really is the feels like value, but let's break it down. A southerly wind, which is what we've been experiencing, creates warm and humid conditions. No surprises, right? It's blowing air in off the Gulf of Mexico. Well, there's a tremendous amount of humidity there, and that's what's driving up those feels like values. East winds don't necessarily always play a role in our temperature. Sometimes they can. That's why I put mild there, but they do tend to create unsettled weather. We get an east wind, we tend to be cloudier, we see more showers and maybe some storms. North, west, and southwest winds, those are dry wind directions, but the difference is in the temperatures, right? So if we were getting a north wind, if we were getting a west wind, if we were getting a southwest wind, our air would be drier, in particular out of the southwest, which is what we were originally anticipating with this heat dome, and it really just depends on where it all sets up. We do have drier air at the in upper levels of the atmosphere, rather, but we do have that moist air still at the surface. And so if we get a due southwest wind, a true southwest wind, that would drive up our actual temperatures. And here's why: because dry air and moist air heat differently. Dry air is much easier and quicker to heat, so you get bigger jumps in those temperatures from hour to hour. You could start off in the morning near 60 and make your way all the way up into the 90s very quickly by the afternoon, because it takes less energy. Remember, the heat and energy are the same thing, right? So in a dry heat scenario, the actual temperature and the feels like temperature would be much closer. And if you've ever experienced desert heat, like say in Vegas, or even in West Texas, up in the Panhandle, it's a lot easier to manage and handle because of the fact that the humidity is not present in the air. Moist air, however, is slower to heat because a lot of that energy is spent on the evaporation of all the moisture that is present, and therefore the actual temperature tends to be lower, but the feels like value tends to be much higher because that presence of all that moisture is what is driving up the feels like temperature. And we've got plenty of it out there, let me tell you, especially right now. This is kind of the peak of when these feels like values are expected to continue to drive up. You can see we've got borderline tropical humidity with dew points in the upper 70s to near 80 degrees, and normally in the afternoon dew points mix out. They're actually lower. Relative humidity is lower in the afternoon. Why? We have a bigger separation between our temperature and our dew point, right? If the temperature is 80 degrees and the dew point, or vice versa, sorry, if the temperature is 100 degrees and the dew point is 80, then you have a bigger separation there. But in the mornings, it feels way stickier because the temperature is lower and closer to the dew point. But as you can see, it looks like by the middle of the week, we're going to start to see some dips here, some changes that we can look forward to that, although they're likely going to be temporary and minor, it's going to help us out at least a little bit. Until then, heat safety has to be a priority and stay kind of top of mind. And our website, fox26houston.com, is like an encyclopedia at this point of information when it comes to heat safety for yourself, heat safety for your pets, heat safety for the kids, when it comes to what types of things to look for when it comes to heat illness, both heat exhaustion and heat stroke, actions to take, cooling centers. You can call 311 to take you there. If you see a pet in distress, you can call 311. All the information on the energy and grid demand. Lena DeFlorius follows that very closely. And there's also a very, very effective hot car demonstration that Matthew Seedorf was brave enough to do. So I would urge you to check there for a multitude of stories, resources, things to kind of read and freshen yourself up on. You can also share that with other people too in the event that you find that information useful. Maybe you're thinking of cooling off by the pool or the beach, and all I got to say is just keep in mind you got to take several precautions in play. I would definitely recommend earlier in the day or later in the day, closer to sunset, because of the whole heat safety component. You got to have an umbrella. You got to be able to take breaks off and in the shade. You also have to worry about the fact that the sun is going to be very strong. You're going to burn quickly and overheat quickly. And if you're headed to the coastline, we still have those rip current concerns because of those gusty south winds that are pushing all of this water on shore. So pay attention to the caution flags, swim near a lifeguard, and again, keep that heat safety and sun safety in mind. All right, taking a look at the tropics and giving you kind of some good news, because heat domes, although they keep us very hot, ridges of high pressure protect us against storm systems, both tropical, and in a second we're going to take a look at how it protects us against severe weather. This area that we've been monitoring, a wave that has exited the coast of Africa, is starting to kind of get a little more organized, get its act together. It's been designated Invest 92L. What Invest give us is the possibility to investigate systems further. We get both the spaghetti models, which you can see that I've underlaid on here, and hurricane hunters will get a chance to fly the system to take a look at what's happening. It is way too far away for them to do that now, but once it gets a little bit closer to the island change to Barbados, they will start to fly and take a look at this system. Probably not for a few more days here. However, odds have been bumped now, 70% in the next 2 days, 90% in the next 7 of development, because it's pushing into an area of very low wind shear and very high sea surface temperatures. That's a lot of source of energy and fuel for this system, and nothing to kind of rip it apart. Wouldn't be surprised if very soon we have our second name system of the season. The next name is Brett. Again, this ridge of high pressure is going to steer a stronger system to the north and out to sea. If that's what happens, the GFS is thinking that that's a possibility. And if it's a weaker system, it would take the path of least resistance right on the underbelly of our ridge of high pressure. That would drive it across Central America. Still something to monitor for the Lesser Antilles and maybe even the Caribbean islands. Not a concern for us. And don't forget, we always have our tropical briefings every day shortly after 4 o'clock to dive into kind of all the details. That one's focused on the tropics in the event that you want to kind of learn more or know more about what's happening out there. I also mentioned that it protects us against severe weather, and you can see that unfortunately the poor folks in the Central Plains and Deep South have not gotten a break. I mean, don't get me wrong, being locked into a dangerous heat pattern is no good, but being locked into the storm track, I would argue, is even worse. I mean, this is severely destructive weather. We're talking about multiple tornadoes, days in a row of massive hail somewhere in the U.S. Yesterday, some of the max reports, winds up to 100 miles per hour and hail in excess of 3 inches in diameter, in addition to the heavy rain, in addition to the flooding. And this is all continuing right now and throughout the day today and into tonight. You can see the area that's focused on the highest likelihood of seeing those severe storms is across the Deep South. Heavy rain and flooding concerns also continue across into the state of Florida, the peninsula of Florida, rather. So this ridge of high pressure is keeping us protected from that. I can't rule out a rogue, stray, decaying storm that might try and squeeze by in the Brazos Valley area or in the Piney Woods area, and that's kind of been the repetitive theme because we haven't seen any movement or shifts or changes in this pattern over the past few days. However, like I said, thankfully, this is going to start to shift some by the time we get to the middle of the week. This ridge of high pressure is going to start to flatten out, and it's going to kind of push off to the west a little bit. We're still going to be hot. We just won't be quite so outrageously hot, and at least this is going to give the opportunity for a more east wind, for some showers to get kicked back our way, and an edge to be taken off the temperature. So it'll be relief. It'll likely be minor, and it'll likely be temporary. As you can see, we start to heat things back up again as we head into the weekend. For right now, that excessive heat warning remains in play at least through Monday night. If these temperatures continue to hover in these values, if those feels like values continue to hover close to those values, then this will likely continue to get extended through probably Wednesday. Wednesday is our first official day of summer, by the way, the summer solstice, and ironically, that's when things will start to shift shift just a little bit for us, right? Likely going to get in on a few triple-digit days. Again, those actual temperatures, once we see that wind shift to southwesterly, a little bit drier air in play to drive up those values, we'll at least have a small chance at some isolated lighter showers or a storm Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then, unfortunately, we start to dry things out and heat things back up as we head into the weekend. So this is a prolonged stretch of at least above average temperatures and also mostly dry conditions. And we're going to continue to monitor the progress for you. And in the meantime, while we're off air, you can, of course, check in online and in our free Fox 26 weather app. This afternoon, John Dawson will be back with another update mid-afternoon. And then you can see us back online on air tonight at 5 o'clock p.m.
thanks to this week's panel, and thank you for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream. And we'll keep talking here with What's Your Point Overtime streaming live on fox26houston.com and on our Facebook page. From all of us here, have a safe Father's Day and Juneteenth.
I'm Shannon Bream. Former President Trump maintains his innocence and his lead in the polls as another former president sparks controversy as he weighs in on the 2024 field. The nation's first black president calls out two Republican presidential hopefuls over how they talk about race in America. Now, Senator Tim Scott is firing back, arguing the left wants to deny progress to protect its power. Fox News Sunday sits down exclusively with Senator Scott to discuss whether his upbeat message can peel away votes.
The GMC Sierra with hands-free driving. Yeah, it rocks. Or take 0.9% APR plus over 1,200 trade assistance and no monthly payments for 90 days on Sierra 5.3-liter V8 light-duty models.
Ultimatums rocking the Republican power structure in Austin. Will the ongoing battle over billions in property tax relief do lasting damage to the Texas GOP? On the national stage, the 45th president hauled into a Florida courthouse to face a slew of felony charges. Will this prosecution of Donald Trump derail or energize his bid for another term leading the nation? And here at home, controversial Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo fully backing Sheila Jackson Lee. Will it help or hurt the Congresswoman's quest to be Houston's next mayor? I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Charles Blaine, founder of Urban Reform. Next up, Holly Hansen, political writer for The Texan. In the 3 spot, Dr. Sergio Lira, president of LULAC Houston. Batting cleanup, longtime super neighborhood leader Tamaro Bell. And closing us out, well-known businessman and columnist for Real Clear Politics, Bill King. Let's begin.
This is called election interference and yet another attempt to rig and steal a presidential election.